Hey, welcome back to Couch Talks. So for our online audience only, we will release these. So for those of you that have been asking the rooms, but we are here with um Vishnu and
Sajal.
Sajal,
Yeah.
and you all did a fantastic talk on Light Neuron,
Thank you.
which I happen to have some personal interest in since I was a part of the evaluations team that worked on Turla. Um, but that was a really complex piece of malware to emulate. I can only imagine the difficulties that you guys had to face when you were going about that. Do you guys want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. No, you're absolutely right. It was extremely complex, and there were a lot of moving parts, and it was on Exchange. So the whole toolkit was built on Exchange. It was targeting Exchange. So spinning up and running an Exchange server and constantly reverting snapshots and just debugging and figuring out why things are not working the way they should was, I think, for us the hardest part.
Yeah. Also, we should mention about the persistence of the malware. So when you have to kill the malware or delete the DLL, then you cannot just delete it. You have to kill a W3AP service, which is the IAS service, which is loading the DLL. And even if you uninstall and disable the service, it still lives in the memory. So if you kill that service, then you have to restart the entire Exchange servers, or you have to find out which particular service you have to restart. So that's again a debugging issue which we are talking about. So if we want to delete it, we want to restart it. So again, it's a 15 minutes of journey. And also to put together, there are situations where Exchange servers crashed, and we have to revert snapshots. And reverting was the main thing that we did. I don't know, maybe 6 days a week.
Yeah, we really thanked our infrastructure engineer after the evaluation was over, and we were like, "Thank you so much, man. Like, we couldn't have done this without you." We used to go up to him almost every day and say, "Can you please revert it? Can you please revert
Thanks,
it?"
man.
And yeah,
I know you're talking about that. We have an infrastructure team. We actually had to develop an infrastructure team because they're like the unspoken heroes.
they are absolutely, yeah.
Like you can't emulate anything until you have the infrastructure and the framework and the highways to even drive on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mentioned on the talk, but I said that if you know an Exchange admin, go and hug them.
Yeah.
True.
I actually loved how you guys called out. You're like, and if you want to get rid of this, you will crash the entire thing if you
Yeah.
just trying to do it the normal way. You actually have to be very specific, which is its own thing because like how do you even find that out until you've cost the company so much money because all of their Exchange servers went down?
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 So
And for the adversary, it's an added benefit, right? Because if it's hard to remediate, you have better persistence.
yeah, it's definitely like a technique I think worthy of Turla.
Oh yes.
Like you
Yeah.
can understand it.
Classic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and for us it was easy because it was in lab environment, but for a
Yeah.
production, just
yeah, you
turning
can't just
down
shut
the
it
Exchange
down.
server for maybe a couple of minutes.
You definitely can't reboot it every day and call it good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we were talking about the tricky thing and the problems that you face only when emulating and like understanding adversaries, like why they do the quirky things they do, right? Because malware development's got to be hard. And you're kind of like, why would they do that? Like as a red teamer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We wouldn't do things.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that was the most the most enlightening part of our journey in emulating this toolkit. Because as former red teamers, we always look at touching disk as something we frown upon, and we steer so clear of it and say that no, let's not touch disk. I mean, this is a huge stealth mistake. Oh my god, bad opsec. But then when you actually go down into emulating that specific piece of code, that's when you appreciate and you acknowledge that this is why they wrote log files to disk, because if they didn't, they would have no way to find out if it worked. And so emulation definitely gives you that perspective of a malware developer, which is amazing. I don't think as red teamers we appreciate that enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is one quirky thing about you both?
So I heard this question a lot of times. Like, I love fussing. I love vulnerability research. Apart from the what I do in job, and I love my job. Whatever do I do in my job, I love it. So recently, I've been into fitness thing after Relic Hacking Dave, who is Dave Kennedy, started We Hack Health. So I am into all defense. I'm a big fan of Dave Kennedy. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's actually pretty cool. Like I was telling you guys earlier that you don't realize that health is actually a big thing for us in our fields until you don't do it, and
Oh
then you're like,
yes,
this is the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. No, I mean, in our industry and in our community, we have so many people spending hours together in front of a screen and not having a very uh, not having a very active lifestyle. And so, yeah, I think fitness is definitely important, and it's great that people like Dave
Yeah.
Kennedy are promoting it because they're really the voice of our industry.
Yeah. So, what about you? Are you are a fan?
Yeah, I'm a massive soccer fan. So I watch football. I watch a lot of it. Someday I would like to be a coach. Once I'm done with security and once it's all done and dusted.
It's the retirement career.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm very passionate about it. I watch a lot of football, and I'll be the guy who's screaming at the screen the loudest.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I love that quiet and then nah. I appreciate that. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and all the research that you did and the amount of work and the year of your life that you spent emulating Light Neuron. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah, anytime. All right. So now we are going to get to talk to Olaf. Olaf is a longtime ATT&CKcon speaker, who I don't know any person that does as many projects as you do.
Well, yeah, probably. Yeah, and it's not all the things, right? So this thing I talked about today is a team effort, and also the talk I did last week. But I like to keep busy. I I find a lot of things interesting, so I get easily distracted and fall into a new rabbit hole. As I do, I'd like to share it as well because if I spend time on it, then somebody else doesn't have to. So it's kind of yeah, that's kind of what it is.
That's fair. I think out of all the work that I see come out, it's like it's easy to see like, oh, the presenter did all the work, but really like there's
No.
teams behind it where it's like it's actually the presenter that's trying to honor all this really complex work that it took multiple people to be able
Yeah,
to do.
for sure. And even if I did all the research myself, I often leverage also other people's research that they also took the time and effort to share about because there's so much to do. And especially if you dig really into the nitty gritty details, that takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. So then there's usually some great mind that already did some of the work as well. So I try to help others with the same thing.
Which kind of makes sense why it's such a tight knit community because none of us can do any of this on our own. So we're like, okay, my brain is fried. Like, who else has done hardware or embedded research because I need to be able to pull from you, or who else has done CI/CD pipeline
Exactly.
and that analytics, and like, where do I even hook in? Like, what matters? What's relevant?
Yeah, I agree. It's so nice to see so many people be so generous in sharing it, and of course, everybody holds back a bit because it's their IP or whatever. But at least the basics can still be shared, or some of the relevant details.
So, what's one project that you have coming up that you've been working on that you're excited about?
Oh, well, I just released a tool called Falcon Hound that we built on our inside, which is a tool that can use like graph databases from like Bloodhound to use as a defender. So we can actually do like real time path calculations based on new logons, new alerts on machines, these kind of things. So that's still something I'm excited to build out because version 1 is there, but there's so much opportunity there. Um, I'm doing some Mac research, which you'll love, of
I'm
course.
very happy with that.
So, and also sort of the hybrid thing between the cloud and how do Macs sort of work there, and what's the attack surface? Because I'm still a bit scared. Most of the security professionals use Macs,
Yeah.
but most of the security solutions aren't as good as some others might be on other platforms. So there must be a way to be exploited without knowing it, right? So that's scaring me a bit. So I'm trying to do my part in a very small way. I'm not a very good on the offensive side, but I like to poke around, and I have friends that are way smarter than me. So usually on collaboration, we can find something interesting things.
It's funny that you say that because you're right. It is such a the Mac OS space is so unexplored in that regard because you have like MDM management, and there's an entire part of the OS that you don't even get to access unless it's enrolled in MDM, and it's a totally different structure than AD, which is what we're used to.
Yeah.
And then integrating a cloud environment and single sign-on, it's such a different landscape.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I started looking into together with Dirk Jan at some moment. He's like a god on all these tokens, and we also were looking into how is it implemented on the Mac side, and there are definitely some improvement areas. on reverse tokens, but also at some point I started looking at the keychain, which is sort of the credential database or vault for Macs. And we ran into an issue where OneDrive does a weird implementation of the keychain where they basically store all the credential material in a unsecured field. And I discovered that through a tool called I forgot the name, but it's by Cody Thomas.
Yeah,
amazing tool. We reported it to Microsoft. They were like, "Yeah, no, it's not a problem." I think it is because basically you can host the whole cloud from that user's perspective. So that's something that I still want to follow up with Microsoft before I blog about it. But
I'm so glad. Yeah, that's actually a huge issue. Like, there's so many different applications. Like, I know IntelliJ products, there's other products, they'll just dump the keychain because they don't want to have to ask for it every single time that they need it. So it's become a weird developer practice, which is actually a really big security concern.
Yeah, it is. And some of the attributes are actually protected with the proper entitlements and these kind of things. But yeah, if you store data in the wrong data fields, like the description, then everybody can read it. So that's kind of a huge risk.
That is definitely understandably being scared. What is one quirky thing about you that we can tell the audience? Something that makes you
it's way too many.
The human of Olaf.
Well, the funny thing is, Olaf is my favorite character in the Disney movies. So
likes warm hugs.
Yeah, he likes warm hugs. He's quirky. He's some ways similar to me. So it's a bit awkward. And at some point, I spent a couple of nights just going through all the Disney movies, capturing the frames and making GIFs out of them. And it's just uploading them to Giphy. I use them a lot, and I think my team gets really annoyed sometimes by it. But it's I embrace the character, so that's probably an interesting thing.
That is probably one of the coolest things. You literally made GIFs of your namesake.
Yeah, there's so much treasures out there in
this
movie.
It's amazing.
It's so funny.
Oh my God, I'm taking a note from your book. I'm gonna find every cat GIF now and then make my own and upload them as cool as cat I know. Oh, thank you so much, Olaf. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Always. So next we're gonna be able to. Hey, come sit.
Hello.
Yes, welcome. Welcome.
Ozan.
Thank you, Ozan.
From IBM,
For IBM, thank you. The joys of like when you're always on live, you're like, you get weirdly nervous, and you're like, why am I nervous? We're just talking. But tell us a little bit about your talk. Like, what brought this about?
Yes, actually, it will be the second talk after the launch. So it will be about very critical stuff, electronic flight bags that pilots are using during the flight. And I will show how we can make a threat assessment to electronic flight bags using MITRE ATT&CK framework. And like I will try to demonstrate how like business impact that we can discover with using MITRE ATT&CK framework. Actually, this is my main objective. And also at the end of my presentation, I will just have a surprise actually to the community because just yesterday something happened in like very critical in terms of cybersecurity, and it will be like the first time that I will explain what happened. It was kind of research from myself.
Really?
Yes, I was like for a while I have been doing some research on post-COVID effects for the aviation industry. So because lots of like companies gone bankrupt. And lots of companies close their operation and stop everything. And now, so there is a post-COVID effect because of those like closed companies actually. And I will show what happened yesterday. It will be a surprise for everyone.
Yes, that's fantastic. And I hate it when things are like timed perfectly for the ATT&CKcon conference, but then I'm also secretly kind of happy about it.
It is public, so it will be a good time to show that in ATT&CK conference actually.
I love that.
Yeah.
So doesn't the flight industry don't you all face like constant safety standards and procedures that you have to face?
Yeah, actually, I don't want to say something wrong because I never address anything with flight safety. So flight safety is completely different. So I don't want to like exaggerate actually this stuff. So we are doing. So there are lots of risk for like financial risk or data security risk and lots of things for aviation industry. But so mentioning something with like because the people is doing that, so they are like mentioning the flight safety is not good actually because there are lots of controls like is being done from the pilots or the, like industry standards, and that's why so the main focus should be on IT side.
Yeah.
And the other side is very dangerous to like mention actually.
Yeah, because there's a lot of regulations.
Exactly.
And,
so I will avoid myself to talk about the aviation, like avionics zone mostly. I will keep in myself like in a IT zone.
That's smart. Yeah. All right, I was wondering about that because I hear all of these stories, like the different hacker conferences, and they're like, we can't really talk about this, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So what is one thing that is quirky about you? I've been asking everybody, so I know I kind of landed this on you.
So
I'm no
actually, I
surprise.
have a like strange passion. Let's say I'm doing some astrophotography. I'm very interested in astronomy actually.
Really?
Yes, and actually, I can recommend that to everyone because it's like kind of very humbling experience, for everyone. So when you will be able to like catch the like pictures from the sky for deep sky objects and everything, your daily problems are gone. So you think nothing, and you don't interest with any problem anymore because you see the size of universe, and then everything is gone. You don't have any stress. You don't have anything. So just go.
I could
Like,
totally see that, like a really good perspective check,
mm-hmm.
because you're
Yeah.
just like this one small little ship in an ocean. And
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So how do you deal with the dauntingness of that then? It's like your impact and what you're doing then.
Actually, it's very helpful to focus what you are doing because, whenever you have some whenever you see the object and whenever you position yourself in the universe, so you are just saying, okay, forget everything. You can just focus what you are doing. You can do the best, and you can focus on this, and it will be very helpful actually for the personal motivation and everything.
Huh. So it's kind of like don't sweat the small stuff because it's all small stuff.
Exactly. Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Huh. Is there anything that you want to kind of plant a seed for your audience when they're listening to your talk?
So I will try to my best because I have 15 minutes only. I will not be able to cover everything that I know. It's impossible. We can just discuss a couple of days about that topic. It will be just a very brief information about the threat assessment, and I want everyone to join and watch.
Yes.
Yes.
So I will put a pitch for you then in the Slack channels. Make sure you ask the questions in the Slack channels.
Yeah.
The reason why this is so significant is because this is where the speakers can be able to answer your questions directly. So definitely pay attention to that. And I look really forward to your talk.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Thanks so much.
All right, next up we have Tim. Tim is like my gold medal Linux contributor for MITRE ATT&CK Linux. I love the title of your talk. I love it. It is literally like I can hacks cake. I love that. So, like, how did you come up with that title?
I guess I was thinking about the way that we interact with attack. We take a lot from attack. To the point that you bought me birthday cake last year.
Yeah.
And I figured, this is a talk about how we give back, so that we don't just continue to benefit from it in terms of our own organisations, but so that we help the community benefit from it too.
Love that. So, what would you say is probably the favorite technique that you've been able to work on in attack?
Favorite technique I've worked. I don't know. I kind of like the techniques that aren't an attack, which is possibly part of the problem at times. There's lots of things I think, oh, we could do that, and attack doesn't necessarily have it, and then you have to go looking for the evidence. So that's probably my favorite bit, is figuring out how to justify to you why it needs to be in the framework. Which threat group is the reason we need to know about it.
Yeah, it's funny. So to give the audience kind of an insight into this, me and Tim will usually be talking about because Tim you're just such an industry expert in Linux across so many different vertices. And so you'll bring me an idea and then I'll be like, okay, well, how is this being used in the wild? And then it's like this entire research discussion.
Yeah, and that's the point I get excited when I've got the justification. I'm like, yes, there you go. There's the example of how it's being used. And critically, then how we build off that to describe it to people who perhaps aren't familiar, and then how we build off that again to describe how you're going to detect it, how you're going to emulate it, how you going to make sure that your organisation is safe, because that's the ultimate goal. It's not the technique or the tactic for its own sake. It's where it leaves the organisation being more healthy and more safe.
That is 100% true, because I know probably one of the biggest things I've asked you is what is the detection on this? How do I even find this behavior?
I've been in too many organisations where I sit there and I look at what they're able to do on non-Windows devices, and it's just a complete lack of any capability. The whole reason to do ATT&CKcon, to do a attack community over the last 2 or 3 years, has been a driver to kind of try and uplift what everybody's capable of. The simple things that you could do. Linux has capabilities inbuilt, Most organizations don't use them, and they sit there and they say, well, we don't have EDR. Do what you can do with what you've got today.
That kind of reminds me of a saying where it's like you do what you can with what you have.
Yeah.
And which is Theodore Roosevelt. And then like Maya Angelou tacked on later, like, and then when you know better, do better.
Hmm.
It's one of those where it's like there is no excuse for doing nothing. Like you do what you can with what you have, and then you'll learn. And as you are figuring it out, you'll do better.
Yeah, when I started out, SOCs didn't exist in the way we see them today. We didn't have SIEMs, we didn't have DevSecOps. Olaf's talking around what he's doing for detection engineering. Neither of those things existed. We made all of those things up from first principles. Like our first SIEM was a SQL Server database. It was a different
and how
era.
we emulate those on like how we pull from them.
So how do you put detection on top of a banking environment that doesn't even have the capability to run an EDR because EDRs haven't been invented yet?
That's nuts. That's nuts to even think about that.
Yeah.
But you guys did it, and you were able to actually have some detection.
Yeah, we built detections that I think at the time would have been helpful, and certainly we saw incidents where we were picking things up that were like, yeah, that needs to be investigated. So what we have today is light years beyond that, but we still need to figure out how to use it, and how to take advantage of the bits that we've got access to.
What do you think is preventing that? Because it's been so many years on Linux. Like it's literally like with all the servers and infrastructure, but yet we still struggle with implementing an OS that we use every day, but don't necessarily know how to configure.
It might be slightly critical. I think the vendors and the open source community both do the things that they know how to do. Vendors know how to document their implementation, their platform. The open source community knows how to do the minutiae of cybersecurity. Nobody's really sat there and gone, well, actually, there's a space for operational security, for process. Just because you've got the greatest security design for your kernel, and just because you've got a great vendor that can issue patches, the triumph of that is having the operational capabilities to take advantage of them. And I think that's the piece perhaps we sometimes miss. I know it's something you've asked about before. Is who should I be speaking to? Where should I be going? Where is that content?
Yeah, that's exactly what I ask all the time. You're like, that's it. So what is one kind of quirky thing about you that, just makes you Tim?
One quirky thing about me. I'm a Brentford fan. I follow the football, as you might gather with a UK accent. A lot of the UK do, but yeah, I follow the football, and I follow one of the smallest teams in the Premier League, and
the smallest team in the
pivots. Well, I can remember when we were collecting money in buckets 7 years ago, and they used data science to get to the Premier League. And that's the bit switched beyond the data science. Was like, if a tiny little club with 4,000 fans who were collecting money in buckets can get to the Premier League using data science, then this is a technology, this is a capability I need to understand and use better.
This is such the perfect answer for you. I love it.
And Attack and MITRE's work slots into that, right? The frameworks that MITRE builds are the things that allow us to measure where we are in cybersecurity.
I so appreciate you. All right. Well, that is all we have for this break. Enjoy your lunch. Take your time. And just absorb. Feel free to know that you'll have these talks later. They will be pushed out, I think, in like 3 weeks. But yeah, feel free to rewatch a lot of these talks because a lot of this content is meant to be like we are, just like one of the other presenters said, we are putting a lot of content into a very tiny amount. And so definitely feel free to rewatch them. And if you guys have questions, please leverage Slack. We are definitely looking at it. And we'll see you soon.